Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. How are you doing today? Hope you are having a great day. Ready for some new drama from Ask a Lawyer? Let's go to the first one, about OP's cousin, who was shaming OP for wanting to adopt her boyfriend's kids. Well, until OP reminded her of her family secret to her face. Listen to the story to find out, and of course to hear my insights. Enjoy the stories, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment. Am I the a-hole? I've been with my boyfriend for almost 2 years now. He has a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old with his ex-girlfriend and has full custody. She gets them every other weekend. I met his kids a year ago and have been building a relationship with them. We're both 23 and young, but we're both mature and stable. He owns his own house and business, and I'm in sonography school. We openly talk about marriage and are planning to elope on his birthday this summer and have been wearing wedding bands. Since we're going straight to marriage, I never called him my fiancé nor announced it online. Only close friends and family know we're getting married. We've also talked about me adopting his kids one day. I have a cousin who I grew up with, and we were really close when we were younger, but grew apart during high school. She's adopted by my aunt and uncle. At a family gathering a few days ago, we ran into each other after not seeing each other for almost 2 years. Since we're the closest cousins in age there, we were talking the whole time. It was awkward. She asks about my boyfriend, and I was talking about our upcoming elopement and other things. She asks about my boyfriend, and I was talking about our upcoming elopement and other things. She screws up her face and says she didn't know he has kids. I tell her he has 2, and she has a look of shock and disgust on her face. She tells me I'm too young to be playing stepmom and that I'm wasting my life if I marry him. I was shocked at her rudeness and tell her that I love my stepkids and I'd rather be with my boyfriend than anyone else. She says that she could never sit and pretend to love a child for a man, and that she could never love a child that wasn't really hers. I bit my tongue at that, since she's literally adopted, and from what my mom has told me, was only adopted because my aunt is infertile, and it was something she had to talk her husband into since he was unsure. I reply and said I'm not pretending anything, and that of course it took time to build a bond with them, and I understand if she wouldn't do it. She just looks me up and down and says I'm too pretty to resort to being a glorified babysitter, and that she's going to find it funny in 10 years to watch my stepchildren disrespect me at family events and yell that I'm not their real mom and that they're not technically lying. I told her that once I legally adopt them, they'll be my children, and she had the nerve to scoff. I was shocked at her audacity and asked her if she forgot she's adopted herself. She got irate, saying a couple adopting a baby together is not the same thing as a desperate person playing stepmom and adopting kids that already have a mom, and I'll never be their real mom. I said, then I guess you're not my aunt's real child then. She started crying and left sobbing. When I tried explaining what happened, everyone said I was wrong and that I shouldn't have brought up her adoption for question, and I'm a major a-hole, and that adopting a baby as a couple is not the same as adopting your partner's kid. They're saying I have to apologize. Am I the a-hole? People in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. She kept berating OP for wanting to adopt children, while she herself was adopted. That tells me she either resents her adoptive parents, or she only considers infant adoptions as real. Either way, she's in the wrong here, not OP. And now let's see if the community agrees with me. Curious Cheek 9128 says, everyone sucks here. Your cousin. Wow. But you also. With the assuming the children's mom would give up her parental rights so you could adopt them. What a horrible thing to be planning. You have a lot of growing up to do. Accomplished says, everyone sucks here. Her because she minimized the bond you have with them and the role you play. And you, cause you are apparently planning to adopt children who have a mother who is in their lives legally. She would have to sever her parental rights for you to adopt them. Is that something you've talked to her about? Mother Tradition 774 says, not the a-hole. Your cousin was being rude and judgmental. You used her own logic against her. She shouldn't have said those things if she didn't want them said to her. However, her overall point is correct. You will never be your stepchildren's mother because they already have a mother. You'll be a mother-like figure to them, but as long as their mom is alive and present, you'll just be the stepmom, which is still an important role to play. The fact that you think you can adopt these kids is evidence that your cousin is right, that you're a bit naive about the reality of your situation. The only way you can adopt the kids is if their mom dies or terminates her parental rights. This happened a couple of weeks ago at a wedding I, 37 male, had attended. During the reception, while While everyone was dancing and generally having a pretty good time, I was sitting off to the side while my wife mingled with her friends. It was my wife's friend's wedding, so I didn't really know anyone there. At one point, she called me out to come over, so I stood up from the chair I was chilling on and started walking over. I accidentally bumped into an older woman and spilled my drink, wine, all over her dress. I immediately felt bad. The woman started tearing up, saying her night was ruined, and I offered to pay for the damages. She ended up leaving early since she was wearing like a pastel pink, and the red wine did not complement it, to say the least. A couple of days later, the woman contacted me and asked if I was still willing to pay for the damages, and I said of course, it was my bad. And she then sent me a link to another dress that looked nothing like the one I ruined, and it cost over $6,000. And she said there's no way to fix the damages to the original dress, so if I can buy this dress as a replacement. Sure, I could afford the dress, and I do feel bad that I ruined the original dress, but felt that the price of the new dress was suspicious. So I messaged back saying, I'll need proof that the original dress costed similar to the amount this new dress costs. So send over the details and I'll get it sorted. But somewhat expected, the woman started making excuses, saying she lost the original receipt or that the designer's website isn't listing the dress, blah blah blah. I told her to send the proof within 24 hours from the time of this last message. So she called me a child for not taking responsibility and that I should pay for the new dress since I have the means to pay. I do, but big question is, how does she know this? I told her no dice. It's simple. Give me proof the original costed anywhere close to the price of the new dress, and it'll be done. 24 hours or offer is off the table. Anyways, I'm sure you can guess what happened. But no proof was sent, so I dropped the matter and told her as such. Turns out this woman was the bride's sister, wife's friend, and now she's angry that I refused to pay for the new dress, and now my wife is angry since her friends are now angry at her. Although she agrees that the price of the new dress seems ridiculous, and said that no way did the original dress cost that much, since in the words of my wife, like how? She's a welfare sponge. Someone who games the welfare system. But wife still thinks I should pay for the new dress so that she doesn't lose her friend. We have separate bank accounts, and she could easily pay herself, but she thinks it should be on me. Am I the a-hole for not paying? Sounds like she's trying to play OP, and she probably found out from her sister, the bride, that OP has the means to pay for such an extravagant dress. Looks like the bride is not such a good friend of OP's wife's either, if she knows that her sister is trying to take advantage of OP and is on her side about it. OP doesn't owe this lady anything more than the cost of the original dress that he spilled wine on. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Main Girl 1923 says, not the a-hole. This woman is a scammer. Since it's clearly a designer dress, I'd ask to see it and the label. No way is a dress worth that kind of money without a label. And no way does the average person spend $6,000 on a dress. And there's no credit card statement for this kind of expensive item. She paid cash. Ugh. Even if it was $600, I'd want a receipt. Oh, and what about the dry cleaning? Did she even get an estimate? Your wife needs better friends. Big time not the a-hole. Coffee Not Bomb says, $6,000? Jesus, that thing needs insurance. I have less than that total in camera gear, and it's insured against loss or damages. I married my late husband Benji in 2008, and we had a daughter together, now 12. In 2020, when she was 9, he unfortunately passed away. I remarried in 2021, and to be honest, I'm much happier. My marriage with Benji was actually very rocky, though of course, his extended family and my daughter do not know this. We are of course still in touch with Benji's family, particularly my former mother-in-law. Former mother-in-law attended my wedding and professed to be happy, but she's always been a bit concerned about preserving her son's memory. For example, she made an impromptu speech at my wedding, saying that this is what Benji would have wanted for me and my daughter. Benji was an only child, and my daughter is her only grandchild. So I do understand, and she's not really a bad person, just grieving in my opinion. After Benji's death, she wanted to share more of Benji with my daughter, and my daughter was happy to hear stories and see photos. I found it helpful for her to have that anchor and encouraged it. I myself was not that close to former mother-in-law, even in Benji's lifetime, so we only spoke sporadically. But the further I've gotten into this relationship, the more strained things have become. Months ago, I invited former mother-in-law to stay with us for a few days. But in hindsight, her relationship with my daughter was already shifting, and it shifted much more in the interim. My daughter is definitely pulling away. I think it's a combination of settling in here, feeling increasingly distant from her old life, growing closer to her stepdad, and just becoming a teenager. I also think it's more about her evolving relationship with her father, grief, than about former mother-in-law herself. Maybe she's also picked up on how much happier I am, but I sort of hope not. But former mother-in-law came to visit as planned. It's not gone well. She made a few subtle comments indicating she thinks I'm alienating my daughter from her biological paternal family. Which, to be fair, I did move her across the country, and I do encourage her relationship with her new stepdad. But I'm also not trying to erase her dad. On the second day, my daughter said something to her grandmother like, "My parents said I could." She was using it more as a shorthand, but former mother-in-law snapped, "He's not your parent," and my daughter was embarrassed. I took her aside and called her out on thinking I was alienating my daughter, and reminded her she was my daughter, and also she was making her own choices. My former mother-in-law said my daughter was playing right into my hands, and then suggested that my significant other's closeness with my daughter was somehow suspicious. I flipped out and told her to leave my house. She stomped out, and I just know she's telling the rest of Benji's extended family how terrible and cruel I am. My daughter seemed ambivalent, but my husband thinks I was overly harsh and should have understood that she was grieving. I feel like it's very hard for me to be unbiased, and I must admit that part of my reason for being upset at my former mother-in-law is because I want her to be happy here and have a good relationship with her stepdad. I mourned Benji too, don't get me wrong, but feel very differently about him to how my daughter feels. If it wasn't for her, I'd make very little effort to keep his memory alive or be in touch with his family at all. In my opinion, she was totally out of line. For me, the "he's not your parent" line was a full-on deal-breaker. If I were in OP's shoes, I absolutely would have clearly, and without room for misinterpretation, explained to her that if she ever said anything like that to my daughter again, that would be the last time she ever saw her. Sounds to me like OP reacted rather tamely, and with more poise and understanding than was necessary. Grief is not an excuse to be an absolute a-hole like OP's former mother-in-law was. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Wrapped to Right says, "Not the a-hole. You've been very gracious about her need to keep her son's memory alive, but she's crossed the line by trying to prevent your newly blended family from moving forward, trying to prevent your daughter from seeing her stepdad as a part of her family, trying to force your now pubescent daughter to stay 9 years ago. She wasn't going to be interested in photo albums and repeated stories forever. And finally, suggesting, with no foundation, that your husband's affection for your daughter is something unwholesome. You did the right thing." Cheese Slap says, "Not the a-hole. This is a pretty clear case of your former mother-in-law dismissing your parenting and disrespecting you. It's fine for her to disagree, but ultimately this is your child and not hers, and it sounds like she refused to accept that. Furthermore, the grief is her problem. You can and should be sensitive to a point, but enough is enough is enough." Sportsfan242 says, "No a-hole or everyone sucks here. I keep going back and forth. Former mother-in-law's only son passed away 2 years ago. A year after he passed, her only grandchild has a new stepfather and lives across the country. I think former mother-in-law is resenting you for moving on so quickly while she's still grieving and doesn't want her granddaughter to forget her father." Me, 29 female, and my fiancé, 30 male, are getting married this coming December, 2 years to the day after we got engaged. We're having a very small wedding, 50 people, and a majority of the guests are friends as we only have 3 family members from each side attending, or so I thought. Since we got engaged a year and almost 2 months ago now, I have always said the ceremony and reception are going to be kid-free. His mom, brother, and sister-in-law, with their 3-year-old and 4-month-old, live in South Florida, and we live in Colorado. His family received the save the dates this week, and all we've heard is, "I hope we can find someone to watch our dog so we can go." And I quote, "That's asking us to leave our kids with a stranger for several hours, not a few. No amount of time really remedies that. It's also a huge expense for us to travel all that way. Kids don't fly free. To have 3 of us not even able to attend. It's unfortunate we might not make it, but at least you'll have future mother-in-law and future brother-in-law there. They don't have a single human on earth that they trust enough to watch their kids for about 6 hours. They don't want to try to start to trust someone over the next 10 months. They are concerned who will watch their combined 3 dogs, and that's the ducking issue right now. She has known this since the day we got engaged. We all talked about it when we went down to celebrate our engagement, and she and I texted about it 2 or 3 times, and it wasn't an issue like it is right now. It's not an out-of-state birthday party or something. We're getting married. We thought about eloping and taking a nice trip, but we wanted to celebrate with our families. Since half of them aren't coming, I feel like we should cancel and elope. Her plan was to bring her mom and have her watch the kids, but now her mom's husband is sick, so she might not want to go now. But her message mentioned cost as a huge factor, so I'm not sure exactly what the actual reason is. His sister-in-law said, "Oh my God, don't be dramatic," about me saying I'll look into getting a refund for whatever we paid for this far. I may be the a-hole by canceling everything and losing out on some of the money we already paid for reserving stuff. And I would have to contact everyone else and say, "Just kidding, never mind, no wedding." Am I the a-hole or overreacting? Lizzie says, "You're the a-hole. That is a really dramatic reaction. An invite isn't a summons." Sweaty Friendship 586 says, "As a couple, you can make decisions that are best for your wedding. As parents, your future in-laws can make decisions that are best for their family. As the saying goes, an invitation is not a summons." Alice in Weirdo Land says, "You're the a-hole. Sometimes child-free weddings mean that family members with kids can't make it. There's nothing wrong with having one, but you must be understanding that it makes things difficult for parents."